Good morning, students. Hope you all have watched the previous video of this chapter and understood the concepts. Now let us study about Cholas. Do you know how did the Cholas rise to power? A minor chiefly family known as the Muttairiyar held power in the Kaveri Delta. They were subordinate to the Pallava kings of Kanchipuram. Vijayalaya, who belonged to the ancient chiefly family of the Cholas from Urayur, captured the delta from the Muttairiyar in the middle of the 9th century. He built the town of Thanjavur and a temple for goddess Nishamba Sudini there. The successors of Vijayalaya conquered neighboring regions and the kingdom grew in size and power. The Pandyans and the Pallava territories to the south and north were made part of this kingdom. Rajaraja first, considered the most powerful Chola ruler, became king in 985 and expanded control over most of these areas. He also reorganized the administration of the empire. Rajaraja's son Rajendra I continued his policies and even raided the Ganga Valley, Sri Lanka, and countries of Southeast Asia, developing a navy for these expeditions. The big temples of Thanjavur and Gangaikonda, Cholapuram, built by Rajaraja and Rajendra, are architectural and sculptural marvels. Chola temples often became the nuclei of settlements which grew around them. These were centers of craft production. Temples were also endowed with land by rulers as well as by others. The produce of this land went into maintaining all the specialists who worked at the temple and very often lived near it: priests, garland makers, cooks, sweepers, musicians, dancers, etc. In other words, temples were not only places of worship, they were the hub of economic, social, and cultural life as well. Amongst the crafts associated with temples, the making of bronze images was the most distinctive. Chola bronze images are considered amongst the finest in the world. While most images were of deities, sometimes images were made of devotees as well. Many of the achievements of the Cholas were made possible through new developments in agriculture. Although agriculture had developed earlier in other parts of Tamil Nadu, it was only from the 5th or 6th century that this area was opened up for large scale cultivation. Forests had to be cleared in some regions. Land had to be leveled in other areas. In the delta region, embankments had to be built to prevent flooding and canals had to be constructed to carry water to the fields. In many areas, two crops were grown in a year. In many cases, it was necessary to water crops artificially. A variety of methods were used for irrigation. In some areas, wells were dug. In other places, huge tanks were constructed to collect rainwater. Remember that irrigation works require planning, organizing labor and resources, maintaining these works, and deciding on how water is to be shared. Most of the new rulers, as well as people living in villages, took an active interest in these activities. Settlements of peasants, known as became prosperous with the spread of irrigation agriculture. Groups of such villages formed larger units called Nadu. The village council and the Nadu performed several administrative functions, including dispensing justice and collecting taxes. Rich peasants of the Velala caste exercised considerable control over the affairs of the Nadu under the supervision of the central Chola government. The Chola kings gave some rich landowners titles like Muvendavelan, serving three kings, Ariyar, etc., as markers of respect and entrusted them with important offices of the state at the center. We have seen that Brahmins often received land, grants, or Brahmadaya. As a result, a large number of Brahmana settlements emerged in the Kaveri Valley as in other parts of South India. Each Brahmadaya was looked after by an assembly or sabha of prominent Brahmana landholders. These assemblies worked very efficiently. Their decisions were recorded in detail in inscriptions, often on the stone walls of temples. Associations of traders, known as Nagarams, also occasionally performed administrative functions in towns. Inscriptions from Uttaramerur in Chengalput district, Tamil Nadu, provide details of the way in which the Sabha was organized. The Sabha had separate committees to look after irrigation works, gardens, temples, etc. Name of those eligible to be members of these committees were written on small tickets of palm leaf. These tickets were put into an earthenware pot from which a young boy was asked to take out the tickets one by one for each committee.